When you disappear without a word, something happens, not just in her world, but inside her sense of safety. Silence becomes a mirror, and she's left asking herself what went wrong, even if it wasn't her fault. This isn't about blame, it's about the quiet ache that ghosting leaves behind, the emotional confusion, the unfinished story, the echoes of what once felt real. Today, we're diving into what she truly feels when you simply vanish, not to shame, but to understand. Because every disappearance tells a story about connection, closure, and the courage to face emotional truth. When someone disappears from your life without explanation, the first thing that hits is uncertainty. It's like walking into a room that used to feel familiar and realizing that the lights are off. The furniture has shifted, and you're left feeling off balance. She starts replaying every conversation, every message, every laugh, searching for clues where none exist. The mind has this incredible, sometimes cruel, habit of filling in the gaps, and often the story it writes is harsher than reality. She wonders, did I say something wrong? Did I fail? Was I not enough? And the hardest part is that these questions have no answers. Silence stretches endlessly, and with each passing hour, the uncertainty grows heavier, like a backpack loaded with invisible stones. This weight is not just emotional, it's physical. She notices it in the tension in her shoulders, in the restless turning of her thoughts at night, in the sinking feeling when her phone lights up, and it's not him. She remembers the small moments. The shared coffee, the playful teasing, the late-night texts that used to make her smile, and now those memories feel fragile, almost like sand slipping through her fingers. And because the silence offers no clarity, her mind becomes a laboratory of what-ifs, experimenting with outcomes, rewriting the past to make sense of the present. She questions her self-worth, not because it was ever truly weak, but because uncertainty has a way of shaking confidence, even in the strongest hearts. This feeling is universal. It happens in friendships too, when someone you trusted suddenly disappears. It happens in workplaces when a mentor or colleague pulls away without explanation. It's in the tiny moments of daily life when you expect someone to show up and they don't. The human brain craves closure, it craves narrative. When that narrative is interrupted, it becomes a vacuum that sucks in doubt, fear, and regret. She might catch herself going back to old messages, scrutinizing tone, analyzing emojis, searching for signs she missed. She might think about calling, texting, reaching out, but the fear of rejection, the uncertainty of response, keeps her frozen. This dance of hesitation and desire is exhausting, yet it also reveals something powerful. She cares deeply, which means she is capable of profound connection. Yet, within this weight of uncertainty lies a lesson. Imagine walking through a forest in fog. At first, the fog obscures everything. Every step feels risky. Every sound is amplified. But as you move forward slowly, the fog teaches you to trust your instincts, to focus on what is within reach, to navigate without perfect visibility. Similarly, when she faces uncertainty, she learns to observe her own resilience. She discovers the ability to tolerate discomfort, to sit with unanswered questions, to hold space for emotions without needing immediate resolution. Life, in its quiet and mysterious ways, is asking her to grow into a version of herself that doesn't crumble when others falter. In daily life, this plays out constantly. When she waits for a reply that never comes, she notices how her mind oscillates between hope and despair. When she sees couples laughing on the street, she reflects on what it means to be valued and present. When she listens to a song that reminds her of shared moments, she experiences both nostalgia and clarity, realizing that memories are hers to keep, not someone else's to define. She might journal, she might walk, she might meditate, all ways to manage the tension of the unknown. And through these routines, she strengthens her emotional muscles, learning that her worth does not hinge on another's presence. It's also motivational because the weight of uncertainty teaches a kind of patience that is rare in modern life. We live in a culture obsessed with answers, with instant feedback, with metrics of success. Yet here, in the silence of someone's disappearance, she encounters the value of endurance. She sees that even when circumstances are opaque, she can maintain grace, curiosity, and self-respect. She can honor her feelings without letting them dictate her identity. She can allow space for mystery without losing her grounding. It's a subtle but mind-blowing realization that life's uncertainties are not enemies but teachers. One powerful way this manifests is through observation of patterns. When someone disappears, she starts noticing what she truly desires and what she will no longer tolerate. She sees how relationships can be messy, imperfect, human, yet how clarity, honesty, and presence are non-negotiable if she wants to thrive. She begins to differentiate between attachment and value, between longing and necessity. And in those quiet moments of reflection, she realizes that uncertainty has given her insight she never would have gained in comfort. She understands that the weight she feels is also a measure of her capacity to love deeply and to endure emotionally. The mind-blowing truth is that uncertainty, while heavy, is also liberating. It forces her to stop projecting the future too far ahead, to live more fully in the present moment, to cultivate self-reliance, and to recognize that validation can come from within rather than from someone else's acknowledgement. The daily exercises of managing uncertainty, waiting for messages, interpreting silence, holding space for what is unknown, become training grounds for resilience. She starts noticing that each day she endures without collapse. Each time she chooses self-respect over panic, she is growing stronger, more self-aware, more capable of navigating life's unpredictable currents. In essence, the weight of uncertainty is like an invisible teacher sitting beside her, demanding attention, patience, and courage. It is heavy, yes, but it is shaping her in ways that certainty never could. In everyday life, this translates to moments like missing a friend who hasn't replied, noticing a loved one's absence, or facing professional setbacks that feel like vanishings of support. Every instance challenges her to sit with the unknown, to trust her instincts, and to affirm her value. She begins to understand that absence does not diminish her, that silence does not define her, and that uncertainty, though uncomfortable, carries the seed of personal growth and emotional mastery. Being ignored is a strange kind of pain, one that doesn't announce itself loudly but seeps into your bones quietly. It's different from someone telling you no or ending things openly. At least then you know where you stand, at least then there's a story, a conclusion, a closure. But invisible rejection, the kind where silence answers your messages, where calls go unanswered, where eyes avoid yours in a room full of people, that is like standing in the rain without an umbrella, feeling every drop on your skin, feeling it soak into your very being. She experiences it in ways that are both subtle and relentless. Every unanswered text becomes a question mark in her mind, every missed call a mirror reflecting doubt back at her. She wonders why, she questions herself. She searches her memory for moments she misstepped, words she spoke wrong, gestures she failed to make. The mind left without information becomes a factory for self-doubt, producing scenarios that spiral into anxiety, heartbreak, and the haunting sense of invisibility. The invisible rejection touches her daily life in ways she doesn't always recognize. She might walk past someone on the street who should have noticed her, and the absence of recognition stings deeper than any argument could. She might send a simple message expecting warmth and connection, only to hear the cold echo of silence. She might recall a shared laugh, a promise, or a plan that never materialized, and the emptiness of that absence presses down on her chest. The pain is not in the words not spoken, but in the acknowledgement that she is no longer considered present enough to merit them. It is as if she is standing on the shore, waving at someone across the water who never turns to wave back, and each second without response erodes a little piece of her certainty, her trust, her belief in connection. Yet, there is a deeper truth hidden in this invisible rejection. She notices patterns, how the world often communicates in absence rather than confrontation, in ghosting rather than dialogue, in avoidance rather than honesty. She sees that being ignored is not necessarily a reflection of her worth, but often a reflection of someone else's inability to face truth, to be accountable, or to manage discomfort. In daily life, this shows up in countless ways: colleagues avoiding feedback, friends disappearing when life gets inconvenient, lovers retreating when commitment feels heavy. Every instance is a lesson in emotional resilience, teaching her that the measure of a person's character is not in the pain they cause, but in the strength of her response. There is a mind-blowing realization here: being ignored forces her to confront herself in ways that clarity cannot. When someone tells you something is over, you can argue, cry, negotiate, or accept. There is a tangible framework to process. When someone disappears, she is confronted with herself, with her emotional patterns, with her expectations. She learns to hold space for her own feelings, to articulate her own needs, and to understand the delicate difference between longing and necessity. She begins to notice small signs in her daily life, how she reacts to delays in work, how she responds to friends who are late, how she navigates uncertainty in traffic, in projects, in waiting rooms. Each micro-experience becomes a practice in patience, self-awareness, and emotional endurance. In a more reflective light, invisible rejection also reveals hidden strength. She realizes that waiting for a response that may never come is training her for resilience. When she writes a message and doesn't receive a reply, she practices letting go of control. When she invests emotionally and sees silence in return, she learns the art of valuing herself independently of external validation. In her daily life, this manifests in smaller, seemingly mundane moments, standing in line when no one notices her smile, raising her hand in a meeting and being overlooked, offering kindness to strangers who may not respond, all of it a practice in self-validation. Every moment where the world ignores her, she learns to acknowledge her own presence, to honor her own voice, to claim her own attention. There is also a motivational undercurrent in recognizing invisible rejection as an opportunity rather than a punishment. It forces her to evaluate her boundaries, to question where her energy is being spent, to discern between people who deserve her presence and those who do not. She begins to see life not as a series of affirmations from others, but as a canvas for self-mastery. She learns that her value is not contingent upon recognition, her joy does not require applause, and her love does not need reciprocation to exist meaningfully. In her daily life, she applies this lesson continuously. When a coworker takes credit for her work, when a friend fails to acknowledge her efforts, when a partner withdraws, she learns to maintain integrity, to act from principle, and to honor her emotional intelligence. Invisible rejection also cultivates empathy. As she experiences the sting of being ignored, she becomes more attuned to the silent struggles of others. She notices the people in cafes who seem lost in thought, the children overlooked in classrooms, the colleagues unheard in meetings. She understands that silence is not always malicious. Sometimes it is fear, sometimes it is distraction, sometimes it is incapacity. This awareness allows her to respond with patience and understanding rather than bitterness. She sees daily life as a web of interconnected experiences where absence and presence coexist, and where her response to rejection can ripple out in compassion and insight. The mind-blowing part of all this is that invisible rejection, while painful, is also an accelerator of self-evolution. It forces her to identify her non-negotiables, to strengthen her emotional boundaries, and to refine her sense of purpose. She begins to navigate the world with a quieter confidence, a self-generated resilience, and a deeper understanding of human complexity. In daily life, this looks like standing in a crowded subway, unnoticed yet unshaken, sending a heartfelt message without expectation, continuing her path even when acknowledgement is delayed or denied. She discovers that the void left by someone else's absence is not a vacuum, but a space to cultivate self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and profound inner strength. The emotional residue of someone disappearing from your life is something that doesn't fade as quickly as you might hope. It's not just the moment of absence that stings, it's the echo, the lingering impression, the way it imprints itself on your thoughts, your routines, your quiet moments. She feels it when she wakes up in the middle of the night and reaches for her phone, half expecting a message that will never come. She feels it in the empty space beside her on the couch, in the way the quiet hums louder than before, in the echoes of laughter that used to belong to shared moments. This residue is invisible, yet heavy, like a scent that lingers in a room long after the person has left. It has a strange power. It can make ordinary days feel hollow, trigger memories at unexpected times, a song, a phrase, a place, into reminders of absence. In daily life, this residue manifests in subtle ways. She might walk past a cafe they used to visit together and feel an uninvited ache. She might see a notification pop up from someone else and momentarily hope it's him, only to feel the disappointment ripple through her chest. She remembers jokes, gestures, the inflection of a voice, the way he said her name, and those memories become both comforting and cruel. The mind has a remarkable way of holding on to what is unresolved, even when she consciously tries to let go. The emotional imprint lingers. It sits in her like a shadow, reminding her that human connection, once experienced, does not evaporate instantly, even when the other person does. The residue also teaches her something about emotional awareness. She notices the physical reactions, the quickening heartbeat, the slight tension in her shoulders, the restless energy in her hands, and begins to understand that emotions are stored in the body, not just the mind. She sees the power of memory, how a scent, a song, or even a specific time of day can trigger feelings she thought were gone. She begins to explore these sensations rather than push them away, realizing that acknowledging emotional residue is the first step toward releasing it. Every time she notices the H and allows herself to feel it without judgment, she strengthens her emotional resilience. She understands that her emotions are not signs of weakness, but proof of her capacity to love, to connect, and to care deeply. There is also a motivational layer in understanding emotional residue. It forces her to confront the impermanence of presence, the fragility of connection, and the reality that not everyone will stay. She starts applying this understanding to her daily life. If a friend cancels plans, she notices the momentary disappointment, but also reflects on what it means to value herself without needing constant affirmation. If a coworker overlooks her contribution, she feels the sting but also recognizes her own competence and worth independently of acknowledgement. The emotional residue from ghosting becomes a mirror, showing her where she invests her energy, how she responds to absence, and how she can cultivate strength in the face of loss or neglect. Mind-blowing realizations emerge from this process. She sees that emotional residue is not just a passive experience, but a teacher of self-awareness. It reveals patterns in relationships, shows her what she truly values, and uncovers where she may be over-investing in people who do not reciprocate. In daily life, this awareness translates to making conscious choices. She begins to spend time with those who uplift her, to communicate her needs clearly, to invest energy where it is recognized and respected. She notices that lingering thoughts of someone who left are not obstacles, but signals pointing her towards self-reflection and growth. She understands that every emotional imprint is an opportunity to examine her own boundaries, desires, and resilience. The residue also invites creativity and transformation. She channels the lingering energy into expression, journaling, art, music, movement. A song on the radio sparks a reflection that turns into a poem. A quiet evening alone transforms into a meditation on self-worth. Even seemingly mundane moments, like walking in the park or brewing morning coffee, become occasions to process and release the emotional echoes. She sees that what remains after someone vanishes can be repurposed into insight, clarity, and personal evolution. The mind, once haunted by absence, begins to recognize the latent potential in these persistent feelings, turning them into tools for growth rather than chains of pain. In her daily routines, she begins to notice how emotional residue shapes her interactions. She listens more attentively, communicates with more intention, and approaches relationships with both caution and courage. She observes her own reactions, noticing when old residues from past ghosting experiences flare up unexpectedly. She reflects on moments when she might have been tempted to disappear herself, and the residue teaches her empathy, patience, and accountability. She sees that emotional residue is not just a byproduct of others' actions, but a reflection of her own engagement with life, love, and connection. Ultimately, the emotional residue becomes a teacher of endurance and insight. It challenges her to stay present with her feelings, to navigate uncertainty, and to honor the depth of her own heart. It shows her that even absence leaves a mark, and that mark carries lessons about resilience, self-respect, and the impermanence of connection. She begins to see that the lingering echoes in her mind are not weaknesses to be hidden, but markers of a life fully felt, a capacity for love fully realized, and a strength that emerges when she faces what is left behind rather than running from it. Closure is one of those subtle forces in life that often goes unnoticed until it's missing. When someone leaves without explanation, without acknowledgement, it leaves a gap, not just in a relationship, but in the mind and heart of the person left behind. She feels it deeply, like a door left half open, a question mark hanging in the air, a story unfinished. The human mind craves conclusion, it craves clarity. Without it, memories, conversations, and feelings loop endlessly, creating echoes that tug at her attention at the most unexpected moments. Closure is not just about the other person saying something, it's about witnessing acknowledgement. The recognition that her feelings, her time, her presence mattered. When that happens, the mind stops spinning, the heart stops aching with what ifs, and she can begin to reclaim her emotional space. In daily life, the absence of closure manifests everywhere. She might replay conversations in her head, analyzing tone, timing, and words, searching for hidden meaning or mistakes. She notices herself scrolling through old messages, rereading emails, or watching videos that remind her of that person, as if by reliving those moments she can manufacture the explanation she never received. She experiences the tension in simple routines. Morning coffee that once involved shared laughter, evening walks that now feel hollow, favorite songs that trigger unexpected pangs of longing. Closure, or the lack of it, shapes her daily rhythm, her attention, and even the way she relates to others, highlighting how human beings are wired to seek resolution, to need acknowledgement, to feel seen. There is a motivational truth in this. Closure is not given to everyone, and often it must be pursued internally before it can come externally. She learns that waiting indefinitely for someone else to provide it can be draining, even destructive. In the quiet of her own mind, she begins to practice a different kind of acknowledgement, speaking her truth aloud in private, journaling her feelings, expressing thoughts she never said, honoring the pain of unanswered questions. Every act of self-acknowledgement is a form of closure, a declaration that her experience matters, even if the other person cannot or will not provide confirmation. In life, she applies this in work, friendships, and family, realizing that clarity can be sought, created, and honored internally without dependence on external validation. The mind-blowing part about closure is that it has a transformative effect on emotional energy. Unresolved endings are heavy, they create tension, keep the heart on edge, and prevent her from fully experiencing the present. When acknowledgement happens, even a simple word, a letter, it releases stored energy, and she feels lighter, freer, more capable of engaging with the world. She sees it in everyday examples: a coworker who finally explains a miscommunication at work, a friend who addresses a past argument honestly, or even a stranger who clarifies an action that had caused confusion. In each instance, clarity releases tension, allowing the mind and heart to move forward with focus, confidence, and renewed intention. She also notices that closure teaches emotional responsibility. When she experiences acknowledgement, whether given or received, she becomes more aware of how her own words and actions impact others. In daily life, she notices moments where she might leave things unsaid, a compliment withheld, a thank you forgotten, an apology delayed. She begins to understand that closure is a gift, and it can be offered without expectation, not to control someone else's feelings, but to honor the connection while it still exists. This perspective transforms ordinary interactions into opportunities for integrity, mindfulness, and emotional intelligence. Closure also amplifies self-respect. When someone disappears, she might feel diminished, small, invisible. Acknowledgement, even if brief or imperfect, reminds her that she was seen, that she mattered. This understanding becomes a lens through which she navigates life. She prioritizes relationships that offer clarity and mutual respect. She lets go of those that don't, and she values her own capacity to act with integrity even when others do not. In everyday life, she applies this in countless ways: finishing projects even when no one will notice, voicing opinions in meetings, or expressing care to loved ones without waiting for reciprocation. Each act is a rehearsal in claiming her space, honoring her worth, and embracing the power of closure internally. The mind-blowing realization is that closure is not about controlling others, it's about reclaiming control of her own story. It is the act of deciding that she will not allow unanswered questions or vanished people to define her emotional state. In practical life, this might mean writing a letter she never sends, verbalizing feelings she never shared, or reflecting quietly on the lessons learned. Each act dissolves emotional residue, releases tension, and builds the muscle of self-sovereignty. She sees that by creating closure within herself, she becomes immune to the chaos of external disappearance, the unpredictability of human behavior, and the uncertainty of unspoken endings. Closure, then, is a tool, a teacher, and a motivator. It teaches patience, reflection, and courage. It encourages her to confront discomfort instead of avoiding it, to articulate feelings instead of suppressing them, and to honor her own experience even when others cannot. She notices the effects in ordinary life, the satisfaction of resolving a misunderstanding, the calm that follows a heartfelt conversation, the clarity gained from expressing truth. These moments illuminate the mind-blowing reality that acknowledgement heals faster than absence because it validates experience, transforms emotional energy, and empowers her to move forward fully, consciously, and with intentionality. When someone disappears without explanation, it tells a story about them, but it also reflects on the way we navigate human connection. Her mind instinctively tries to piece together the puzzle. Why did he leave? What does it mean? Yet beyond the immediate sting, there's a deeper lesson. Disappearance is rarely about her inadequacy and more often about the other person's inability to confront discomfort, uncertainty, or emotional responsibility. When someone vanishes, it exposes a lack of courage to face difficult conversations, to honor commitments, or to communicate honestly. It is a mirror of their emotional immaturity, and yet it challenges her own maturity as she processes the absence without crumbling. In daily life, this shows up in subtle, relatable ways. When a friend stops replying after a disagreement, when a coworker retreats instead of clarifying a misunderstanding, when a partner avoids a necessary conversation, the pattern is the same: avoidance. She sees that people who disappear often prioritize immediate comfort over long-term respect, and the pain they leave behind is not a punishment, but a consequence of their own choices. In her routines, she might notice the small signs: someone dodges eye contact in a group, messages come late and curt, commitments are repeatedly broken. Each action, or lack thereof, communicates volumes, and she begins to understand that disappearance is a language in itself, a reflection of inner limitations rather than a statement about her value. This realization is motivational because it shifts her focus inward, prompting growth instead of despair. She starts examining her own patterns of avoidance, the moments when she might have chosen silence over confrontation or comfort over honesty. She reflects on instances in daily life, leaving a difficult conversation unresolved with a sibling, avoiding a tense discussion with a boss, skirting a hard question with a friend. These small vanishings, though different in scale, carry the same lessons. They show her that emotional maturity is not about avoiding pain or discomfort, but facing it, naming it, and engaging with it directly. She begins to recognize that maturity is expressed in the courage to stay present even when it is uncomfortable, to speak truth even when it risks conflict, and to act with integrity even when it is inconvenient. The mind-blowing part of this awareness is that disappearance is not a verdict on her worth, but a lens into the human psyche. It teaches her that some people will leave because they are not ready to meet life and relationships with accountability. She observes this in daily situations: a colleague who avoids giving feedback, a partner who sidesteps emotional conversations, a friend who disappears when needs are expressed. These moments, painful as they are, illuminate the difference between presence and avoidance, responsibility and evasion, courage and fear. She begins to see patterns in the world and in herself, and she gains insight into how to respond with grace, awareness, and emotional intelligence rather than bitterness or fixation. She notices that when someone vanishes, the initial instinct is to chase, to seek justification, to find closure externally. Yet emotional maturity requires a different approach. Instead of seeking validation from those who cannot provide it, she learns to anchor herself, to understand her own reactions, to reclaim control of her emotional landscape. In daily life, this might mean stepping back from unresponsive friends, calmly addressing issues with a partner without over-investing, or setting boundaries with coworkers who avoid accountability. Each action strengthens her sense of agency, showing that her emotional stability does not depend on others' presence or honesty. Disappearance, then, becomes a teacher, revealing both the limitations of others and the resilience within herself. There is also a profound motivational element in realizing that disappearance tests the depth of her character. She notices how she responds to uncertainty, to absence, and to unanswered questions. In the chaos of someone leaving, she has the opportunity to practice patience, reflection, and self-respect. She might wake up in the morning thinking about him, then pause and remind herself that her life does not pause because someone else chose to vanish. She might walk through a familiar street where memories linger, and instead of sinking into longing, she observes, breathes, and continues forward. The act of maintaining integrity and clarity in the face of someone else's disappearance is a subtle, yet mind-blowing, demonstration of emotional strength and wisdom. Disappearance also teaches her about boundaries and self-value. She begins to notice how much energy she invests in people who cannot match her presence. In everyday life, she sees it in small acts, repeatedly calling someone who never calls back, offering help to those who never reciprocate, emotionally reaching out to someone who avoids connection. Each moment illuminates a lesson. Her time, her attention, and her heart are not commodities to be wasted on those unwilling to engage authentically. She learns that true emotional maturity means recognizing these patterns, setting limits, and choosing to engage with those capable of respect, honesty, and presence. In essence, what disappearance says about someone else is also an invitation for her own growth. It invites reflection on courage, integrity, and the ability to face discomfort head-on. It encourages her to evaluate her own behavior in relationships, to notice when she avoids difficult conversations, and to cultivate presence in every interaction. In practical terms, this shows up daily, speaking up in meetings instead of hiding behind silence, addressing conflicts in friendships instead of withdrawing, or expressing feelings honestly in romantic relationships instead of disappearing herself. She realizes that the measure of a person is not in whether they vanish or stay, but in how they navigate the tension between comfort and responsibility. Ultimately, disappearance becomes a lens for self-awareness, a mirror reflecting not what she lacks, but what she can develop. She notices in ordinary life the coworker who avoids feedback, the friend who stops responding, the partner who sidesteps emotional conversation. Each vanishing act teaches patience, self-respect, emotional resilience, and the importance of integrity. She begins to see that while others may choose to escape discomfort, she has the power to face it, to learn from it, and to live with courage, awareness, and intentionality. And so, what we have uncovered today is not just the pain of someone disappearing, but the extraordinary power that lies within her response to it. She has been forced into silence, into questioning, into confronting the emptiness left behind. And in that space, she discovers something most people never learn in comfort. Resilience is born in absence, strength is forged in uncertainty, and clarity emerges from the chaos of unanswered questions. Life does not hand out understanding easily. It challenges, it pushes, it vanishes. And in those very moments of disappearance, she finds the chance to confront her own heart, to witness her own worth, and to rise above the shadow of someone else's choices. She learns that no one can take away her power unless she allows it. She sees in her daily life the small but powerful truths. The coworker who ignored her idea did not diminish her brilliance. The friend who vanished in a moment of conflict did not erase her capacity to love. The partner who disappeared did not cancel her value. She begins to understand that absence is not the opposite of love, but a teacher of it, showing her where attachment can blind, where expectations can hurt, and where self-awareness can liberate. She internalizes the lesson that true strength is silent, enduring, and deeply rooted in self-respect. As she moves through mornings without messages, evenings without explanations, she feels herself becoming unshakable, not because the world has been kind, but because she has chosen to stand, to reflect, and to grow. And the most magnificent revelation is that she can create her own closure, her own meaning, her own peace. She discovers that waiting for someone else's honesty is not a prerequisite for her happiness. She learns to speak her truth even when it is unseen, to act with integrity even when no one applauds, to honor her own journey even when others vanish. In everyday moments, this manifests in responding to setbacks with calm, in greeting the morning with gratitude, in choosing self-love over desperate validation. She notices the power in small acts, sending a heartfelt message without expectation, completing a task without recognition, offering kindness without demand. Every choice becomes a declaration. She will not allow absence to define her. She will not let silence diminish her. She will not permit the disappearance of others to erase her light. She also realizes that the pain of being left behind is not just a wound but a compass. It points her to authenticity, reveals the edges of her boundaries, and teaches her discernment in relationships. She understands that every person who disappears has helped shape her emotional intelligence, showing her who deserves her energy, who respects her presence, and who aligns with her values. She begins to navigate life with intention, noticing the people and experiences that lift her and distancing herself from those that drain. She becomes a master of her own emotional world, recognizing that while she cannot control others, she can control how she engages, reacts, and grows. In this journey, she embraces the wisdom that life's challenges are not punishments but opportunities. She reflects on every silence, every vanished presence, and sees them as lessons in patience, courage, and self-discovery. She understands that she has survived moments that seemed unbearable, and in doing so, she has built a reservoir of strength that will sustain her through future storms. She repeats to herself in quiet reflection, "I am more than their absence, stronger than their silence, and worthy beyond measure." And in her daily life, this mantra guides her, waking up each day with purpose, holding her head high when ignored, moving forward with confidence even when unseen. She knows now that life rewards those who choose presence, integrity, and self-awareness. She remembers the words of those who inspire courage. What lies behind us and what lies before us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. And she carries that truth in her heart, letting it guide her every choice. She feels the impact of her own resilience ripple into every corner of her life. Friendships become richer, work becomes more meaningful, love becomes deeper, and her own spirit becomes indomitable. She sees that every disappearance has not diminished her. It has amplified her awareness, strengthened her resolve, and awakened a power she may not have known existed. And so she walks forward, not defined by absence, not limited by silence, not constrained by what others fail to give. She carries within her the knowledge that her worth is inherent, her strength is unwavering, and her capacity for growth is limitless. She has learned that closure can be created within, peace can be cultivated regardless of others, and joy can be reclaimed even from vanished connections. She understands that life is a canvas, and she holds the brush. Each day, each choice, each moment of reflection paints her resilience, her wisdom, her courage, and her light. In her journey, she becomes an example for all who have felt ignored, left behind, or uncertain. She embodies the truth that absence can teach more than presence, that silence can reveal more than words, and that the human spirit is capable of extraordinary growth when confronted with the unknown. Every challenge becomes a lesson, every pain a catalyst, every vanished presence an opportunity to rise higher, shine brighter, and embrace the magnificent power that comes from owning one's emotional world, claiming one's story, and walking forward with unwavering grace.